Hello and welcome. You're tuned into this new edition of the Climate Clock podcast. We're coming to you after a break. But every new beginning or every new show needs some ideas, and we were trying to just talk about new ideas and get new information for you as well. And that's why the break. But you have written to us, and one of the most prominent requests have been carbon credits because this is something which is used by businesses, this is used by governments, there are different regulations across the globe. Where does India stand? What do businesses really do with it? And is it really the way to go around decarbonization? The regulations or the methods that have been used and the targets that have been set by different economies as well. So let's get in our expert for the day today. We have a very special guest joining us on the podcast today, Mr. Chaitanya Kalia, who's the partner EY and national leader for climate change and sustainability services. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we took a break on the podcast for a bit. And one topic that everyone wanted to understand was carbon credits. So you have all the specialization there. So let's get started and with the basics. What exactly are carbon credits? Are they really used a lot globally? And what are they exactly used for?
Thanks, Sonal. Pleased to be part of your podcast. I know you have a lot of interest in the subject. So I'll go with the basics. Carbon credit is basically, paperwork we do to convert reduction of greenhouse gas emission and convert it to tradable commodity. So once it converted to tradable commodity through a mechanism, which I'll explain in a moment, it's called a carbon credit. So that's how. And once it is converted to credit, of course, can be sold, purchased, repurchased, etc. And that's what is happening since Kyoto Protocol, which came into 2001.
Okay. So since 2001, it is in place. But tell me, is it used a lot? I wanted to understand the frequency. Are businesses and governments using it a lot? And when you say that mechanism, how does it exactly work? Suppose company A has some greenhouse emissions. How do they go about it?
So, let me explain how you
Yeah.
convert to first the
Yeah.
carbon credit. So, any project, for example, someone is putting up a solar panel or a windmill, then they are producing power. But at the same time, the same power could have been produced by a fossil fuel like coal or diesel or something else. So, what is considered if you are using renewable energy, then you are replacing some of those greenhouse gas emission which will come out of burning of fossil fuel. You first do the calculation of that. So if you are producing 1 kilowatt or 1 megawatt of renewable energy, equivalent amount, you reduce greenhouse gases. Now, initially, there was United Nations came up with a registry, which was CDM mechanism or Clean Development Mechanism, that was supported by UN. It still continues, but now there are many private registries also. So what they do, step one, is they create a methodology. How do you do the maths of, okay, if I produce so much of solar energy, so much of biomass based energy or any other renewable, and there are even the energy efficiencies or reduction of certain gases, all of that help in reduction of greenhouse gases. So first is you do a methodology to calculate it. Second is that calculation needs to be verified by third party. So which is the validation process, we call it. And this document is submitted to, earlier we used to submit to United Nations, UNFCCC, United Nations Framework for Climate Change. And now it is submitted to, there are some 8-10 registries, we submit to them. Okay, once it is done, this paperwork get converted to a tradable commodity. They approve it, of course, then it gets and it is shown. Okay,
Okay.
my company who has put so much of solar, etc., and it has produced so much of carbon credit, it is in that account.
Okay.
Okay, now if someone else is buyer, they will reach out to me, say, yeah, I'm interested in buying that, and then registry transfers that, something like through demat account of mine to someone else's account. So that's how the transaction happens. And the money exchange has, registry does not generally play a role in the commercial transaction. It is done directly through some bank, through some escrow account. That's how the mechanism works.
Okay, it's very interesting, and there are a couple of questions on
Sure.
what you just told me. But let's talk about more basics. When we talk about 8 to 10 registries who are taking care of this transaction, are there any regulations in place as well? Somebody. And if a company has to do it, do they have to do it under some regulation, or they can do it voluntarily? Like they can just go ahead and say, okay, I will put up a solar power plant because I have made some emissions, so I need to ensure that there is equality there.
So there are two types of market. One is the regulatory market. Of course, it is regulatory, so it is governed by different laws. And another is the voluntary market. So regulatory market, which was under Kyoto Protocol, it did not continue beyond 2015. So now there are local country level regulation. In fact, India is also planning to go ahead with one. And there are many other countries, they have their own local regulation. And then rest of it, which I talked about, all the voluntary market. In regulatory market, there are some companies who are doing more emission. They have been asked to reduce emission, like in Europe. So they have given some quota. If you reduce, I mean, you have to be below that. If you exceed, then you have to either pay a fee, penalty or fine, or you offset it by buying credits from the market. So that is what is the regulatory market. Same thing happens, but on voluntary. For example, a big conference is happening somewhere, and it everybody is flying, and there is so much of emission, and there is no compulsion that you have to offset it. But if you want to do that buying some carbon credit, then you do that through a voluntary mechanism. So that is not regulatory.
You know what reminds me of a big conference where people are flying in is COP. A lot of
And
them coming together to
true.
talk about climate change. But jokes apart, how does the pricing work here? Now that since it is not all cases, it's a regulated market, a registry. When you talk about registry, the registrar doesn't take care of the pricing. So how are the prices settled here?
Same like any other market based on demand and supply. So if it is regulatory market and the regulations in the country or the geography is very, very strict, obviously the prices will go up. Like in Europe, there is a EU ETS, European Union Emission Trading Scheme, which is running in a sense successfully, but the prices are generally above 50 euro per ton of CO2 reduction. 1 ton of CO2 reduction is one carbon credit.
Okay.
So that's it's as high, and sometime post COVID they even went much higher, closer to 100 euro per ton of CO2. But that's not the case. It's one end. In the voluntary market, they're also very low. It could be $1 or $2. Generally, a dollar and euro are the the currencies used for these transactions.
And have we seen a big demand coming into carbon credits? Like, has the awareness increased in last 4 or 5 years? Because as you're saying, during COVID it surged, and that's what a lot of companies operating in Europe also said, that they had this extra expense in their P&L where they had to pay more for carbon credits in terms of numbers.
That's true. So COVID, post COVID, there was definitely a big surge, but also like for every commodity, there is a quality, right? So the gold also, the price for 24 carat and 18 carat is different. Similarly, for carbon credits also, there is a quality element. So quality in the sense, there are concepts like transparency, traceability, additionality, from where it is coming, what kind of project it is coming, if whether the credits are or money is allotted to that project or not, which will happen. If suppose without carbon credits, many of Indian renewable energy projects are happening on their own way. So the demand or the requirement of revenue from carbon credit is not that high. So those are the quality concept on the carbon credit business also play a very, very important role on the pricing.
Okay, all right. And India, how you said India is going to come up with its own regulation here. Did India ever get into this and take a step back, or the green credits program, is that related to carbon credit scheme in any way?
Yeah, so there are two, three things parallelly happening in India. I think one is India's own carbon credit program, which was, in early 2000, I think October 23, it was announced. And the idea was to do the same thing which I explained. So there would be a registry, there could be an administrator, then there will be, mechanism of, getting on board the verification agencies, and who will reduce how much. That will again, Ministry of Power, for example, they would determine what should be the quota of each of the industry. So that entire mechanism as a gazette notification has come up. Bureau of Energy Efficiency is planning already. I believe they are pretty much in advanced stage to launch this program. So we will have our own Indian carbon market where we would know which companies have to, what, how much quota they have or how much they have to reduce. So they will know where to buy, and then variety of companies, they can go through this process of registration and issuance. And one thing I missed is that you don't do it on the one time. You have to do it every year. So you can do it
Hmm.
for 7 year, 10 year, whatever is that period of when you prepare the project plan. You say, okay, okay, my project will receive carbon credit for let's say 10 years, and you register based on that.
Okay. But since we don't have a regulation in India so far, how do Indian companies go about it? Like, uh, do they take it from some regulation abroad or registry? I just want to understand what happens here in India if some Indian companies buying carbon credits or issuing carbon credits versus their
Right.
emissions.
So Indian companies have to go to those right now, those private registries, uh, which I'm talking about. UN is going to come up through Paris Accord. There is a, you know, clean development mechanism, which was the regulatory aspect. It is now changing to sustainable development mechanism. But rules of that game is, or process is not yet ready. So we are waiting for that. Maybe another couple of years it will be ready. In absence of that, what Indian companies they do, and there are a variety of projects where the emission reduction will happen. So it is about biofuel you talked about. So even those generate carbon credit. So they have to do this calculation, use some of the methodologies, and then reach out to one of these registries. So they don't do it in India; they go abroad, and then they register the project, and then yes, mostly the buyers are international, so it makes sense to go out of India and get it registered there in Middle East, they are in Europe, in US, in many places. So it's a virtual, you do it online only, so that's possible.
Okay. And we do have a lot of consultants now, I believe, as well in India. Some of them are listed as well, which talk about carbon credits or helping companies get carbon credits. Uh, is there a number to how big the market would be, say in India or globally? Has some calculation been done on this in this regard?
There are people do the calculation, very difficult to pinpoint, but what we can it based on, because as I said, once it is registered, everyone knows about it. So based on how many, so all this registry, if you do a dump of it and see, okay, how many projects are registered, how many of have been issued the credit, we can do all of that maths and put together. Global market would be about, closer to 2 billion US dollars. That is the
Okay.
size of the market. Also, there is, you get it issued, but has someone received the money? It depends on the way the transaction happens. So, therefore, I'm saying actually pinpointing the extent of transaction actually taking place, how much profit anyone is making, is it impacting the project to happen? Pinpointing is slightly difficult. I tried myself, but
No, but
yeah.
there are some. It's not black and white so far, right? There are some gray areas in carbon credits as well. And one of them could be double counting. What does that mean? Because maybe company A sold it to company B, but then we counted that twice. Does that happen often? What are some of the other issues with voluntary carbon markets, or maybe regulated as well, which the industry is still not able to solve?
Yeah, many questions. So double counting is an issue. So when you go for registry, you try to do that. Key, okay, where the project is coming from, what is geographical location, what is the technology. You have to disclose it very, very transparently. And anyone or any consultant is helping or any entity is buying the credit, they should be aware of. Otherwise, it's quite possible that double counting is happening. Very, I mean, uh, happens in renewable project, happens in some cases where biomass based projects. So it's possible you sell credit once and then you can also take benefit otherwise. That's what it is. You don't sell it twice, but you take benefit otherwise. That's where the double counting basically happens. Then issue with the voluntary credit is mostly about not monitoring it properly. Most of the issue we have seen is happening in the LATAM countries are related to improper monitoring, and that's where you have monitored it and there is some overlap. Again, you have counted it, so that's again another way of double counting, and it is all over news. So you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So that's what a good robust framework, and we should use technology, satellite imageries, geotagging, variety of things are available using drones, etc. Even to go to the remote forest area and do a very proper monitoring. All that is now happening, and it's possible also to avoid double counting. Not a major deal.
Okay. So there are at least conversations in place, regulations in place, which could be coming to avoid double counting as well. In that case, I'm coming back to India, of course, because we don't have a framework yet. The green credits program is there. Will we see an extension of that? Have been there in conversations. I just want to understand. Can an individual also look at trading carbon credits in a market? So does green credit help there? Because that's, I think, for individuals, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, it designed a different way. It is about saying that we have a lot of land which needs plantation. Now, who would do the plantation? Most of it is in India. The private land, large tract of private land is very limited. It's all belong to the forest department. So idea is that every area, every location, every region, forest department will identify that the plot, and once it is identified, it is published. So as an individual or as a company, we can reach out to them and say, okay, I would like to do plantation in this area. Then it is responsibility of the department to tell, okay, for this geography, this is the kind of plantation, generally not a monoculture but a mix of forest kind of plantation, which they will do. They will take care, maintain, and also monitor and give the maths that how much this is going to generate, how much carbon credit. And once that verification is done, those carbon credit will be issued and it is government recognized. Today it is said it can be used for compensatory afforestation if someone wants to do, and then if I want to get it on my name or as an individual, probably you can do that. What kind of pricing, again, it's
It's
not known.
market driven.
Can it be used as a transaction subsequently? I believe it should be, because the entire activity now got converted to tradable commodity. So I think once we have this mechanism which I earlier talked about, I think it should be possible to trade it eventually, those green credits program. But it's very, very good. I mean, if it becomes successfully, we have very fast, lot of land tracts will get covered. Today it is barren, but it will have a lot of plantation everywhere.
And you spoke about so many commodities did well during COVID. I was just seeing some data. Carbon credit was one of the best performing commodities. So only if people could trade in that at that point in
Yeah, the
time, because
base was
that's
very low, so
but for them it would be a new commodity to talk about. But I do
yeah.
get your point.
Yeah,
Um,
it
uh,
is not a well understood commodity, so
Yes.
that
And
I
that's why this
agree. Yeah,
conversation. So that's why I
true,
had you on the show as
true.
well, because a lot of interest, but people do not really understand that. But when you say that it's not well understood, and we also are saying that there are upcoming regulations, would you have any suggestions on how we can get some international regulations as well in India, or what can be done if they are forming a policy here?
So I'm not very sure international regulation, because it's a the trading would happen internationally, but we have to have as a India our point of view. And if I take couple of step back, the genesis of creating this carbon credit was, if a developed economy who has already grown and if they have to reduce their emission, because the whole idea is that equitable reduction, everyone has to contribute for that. So those countries where the emission already has happened historically, and if they have to reduce, so per ton of emission reduction, the cost, or we say marginal abatement cost, is very high, north of easily $100.
Okay.
And if you do the same thing in India or developing economies, it is much, much less. Okay, so putting up a project in India, reducing so much of greenhouse gas emission is much less. And all this greenhouse gas goes to the same atmosphere. So it doesn't matter you're doing it India or Africa or Thailand or Vietnam or in US or Europe. It is same reduction. That is the philosophy. And it was said, like, all right, let's come up with this mechanism where the reduction happens in emerging economies, and then credit can be purchased by developed economy and they pay for it. So that was the win-win situation initially got created. So if we want to, answering question, want to develop something for India, it should be aligned in a way that someone is ready to pay a good buck for that. If that doesn't happen, it remains within India, then I think the advantage will get lost. That's my view.
This would be separate from climate finance already, or the
No,
money that
it
has to be
can.
paid by developed countries to developing countries.
No, it can be. I mean,
It
see,
can be a part of that as well.
absolutely. So as a country, we have a very clear stand that we have. I mean, today we are growing because we have our own contribution to the greenhouse gas emission. But if you look at a historical perspective, it is very, very limited, less than 5%, less than 4% even. So we have historically we have not contributed much, and we are growing now. The new technologies will help us to grow at the same time reduce emission, but those technologies are not available. You talked about sustainable aviation fuel, for example. Now everyone needs that. We all are flying, but if we need sustainable aviation fuel, it can come from various sources such as biomass. It can come from used cooking oil, and we need that technology. If the technology is costly and it is coming from somewhere else, then carbon credit becomes a very good mechanism to offset it. And again, government has a program. There is going a little technical, but
No, but that's okay. Please go ahead.
Paris Agreement has Article 6, and under that Article 6.2, where countries can talk to each other, they can have some collaboration, and then technology comes with carbon credit exchange. So that program for variety of decarbonization related technologies allowed, which is offshore wind, it is about hydrogen, sustainable fuel, aviation fuel, CBG, compressed biogas basically. So many other technologies, some 12, 13 of them, carbon capture and storage. So if we are doing those technology, running those program, putting those project, the it will reduce greenhouse gas emission. So we convert that to carbon credit,
And then
give the
get paid for
carbon
it.
credit, and take the technology. That mechanism is going to be in place.
It is going to be in place
Yes.
very soon because there have been discussions in COP about it as well, right?
That's right. So India is much ahead among many countries. They have decided these 12, 13 technologies. They will allow international transactions. So that part is sorted. Now we have to see who is coming forward and in trying to do this transaction. So that part, I mean, I think it's an ongoing process.
Yeah, that's been tricky for a while, but yes, that has been a conversation for a long time. We are also talking at a point where we do see these buzzwords a lot. Green hydrogen, you spoke about sustainable aviation fuel, carbon capture. Government is talking big terms here, but again, technology has been a problem. How do you think that it can be incentivized? Do you think budget will be a place where you'll see some big bang announcements? What are your expectations for somebody who's seen this particular sector for so long?
I believe it should be, because if we have, we have taken a 2070 as a net zero target, and we have a midterm goal of 2030. Progress is happening in that area, but definitely budget allocation to some of these would be required, and I expect that to happen. How much we don't know, obviously, but what I have seen that proactiveness of the government is there. So I suspect that some action and budgetary declaration, okay, this is some of the area we are going to do, is definitely going to happen.
Some cross-border adjustments have also taken place. The
Mm.
carbon border adjustment tax. Do
Yeah.
you think this is something that India can do as well to ensure that they get paid for whatever carbon emissions are happening because of imports, because of what other countries are doing? Would that all that also become a part of carbon credit scheme?
Yeah, it's a kind of tit for tat approach. But today we are in a difficult situation because Europe has announced that carbon border adjustment mechanism, CBAM it is, where exporters from India of certain, hard to abate sector like steel and fertilizers, mostly steel, if it is getting exported, then what is the difference in emission for emission if we produce the same thing in Europe vis-a-vis in India, and it's not for India, for any other country, that difference is getting taxed. So India, our emissions, still use quite a lot of coal, is generally higher. That means you have to pay the tax. But I mean, people probably they know, but there is a inbuilt mechanism that if the taxes are paid in the country, then there is no double taxation. All right. So if our green credit mechanism or the carbon credit mechanism, which is likely to come up in India, and it is supported by a government, it is meeting all those international regulatory requirements. And if that amount is paid by the company already in India, then they don't have to pay again in Europe. So that we can take very well advantage because we are in much advanced stage now.
Oh, that's an important clarification because so far
Absolutely. Yeah.
people were not thinking about that. They were
No,
like,
no,
okay, we'll
that
just have to go
mechanism is
ahead
then, yeah,
and
of
pay
course.
taxes on that. Okay,
Yeah.
that is interesting. So maybe India might not have to go to WTO because that was one of the assumptions
I
that
think WTO going is more based on the principles.
you have to do that because something
Correct,
has happened in that direction.
correct.
No, I
True.
totally take your point. So, if we talk about carbon markets globally, which one do you think is the most developed one? Is there any ranking which is available? You spoke about EU ETS. Does US have one? And is it only in developed countries right now?
No, it is there in developing economies as well. China has, Korea has, so it's there in some of the other countries also. India will have very soon. I think most robust one which is running since long is in EU ETS, which I talked about. There are few in California, so US couple of them, but that's it. I mean, it's not yet reached where it is making a huge impact in day-to-day decision making. But I would love to see that. It should be the whole idea, concept, which people sometimes talk in COP. Everyone reach there, they have
Yeah.
to talk about something else. The holy grail is that every country has their own carbon
Yeah.
kind of credit type of mechanism, and then they are interconnected. So the fungibility becomes also very high. So it's my choice. Now I have a good quality carbon credit. I get it approved in India, want to sell in part in some other country, part in some other country. Why not?
And it also leads to, since the world is so connected right now, it's important to have that connectivity. As you said, it's fungible, but the quality is different. But it does lead to greenwashing a lot as well, right?
So greenwashing can be controlled very well if you go the fundamentals of the carbon credit, where a project needs to be, as I said, additional, and that is the concept. Anyone who is developing carbon credit must understand and adhere to that also. And second is it's about the monitoring. How if your monitoring mechanism is very robust, technologically induced, transparent, anyone can see, then probably issue related to greenwashing, double counting, all that will go away.
So is it fair to say we should rely more on regulated markets than voluntary markets?
No, and both has its place. I mean, voluntary market also, in absence of regulatory markets in so many years, even the voluntary market is also, running, flourishing. It's just that the purpose it solves are very different. So, and the prices, of course, voluntary market, the supply is high, so prices are always very low.
Always on the lower
Yeah.
side. We get that point. And $2 billion, of course, not pinpointing that number, but there's so much to go. As you said, there's a lot happening globally as well. Chaitanya, it was such a pleasure speaking with you and understanding everything about carbon credits. I, for one, learned a lot, and it is a topic which I'm very interested in as well. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thank you, Sonal. Thank you so much. Pleasure being here. Thanks.
Okay, all right. With that, we'll take your leave on this edition of Climate Clock podcast. But do write to us as you always do on the topics that you want to understand and for us to take up on the show as well. For now, we'll take your leave.